I came back from the maternity hospital with a baby in my arms, and my husband yelled, "Stop living at my expense," and threw us out the door. I left, without turning around, and in the morning my surprise with the lawyer's signature was waiting for him. And before we will continue the story, write in the comments what is your name and what city are you from. Late May evening greeted Anya with icy rain, as if the city itself was trying to warn her against what was waiting behind the familiar but at that moment frightening door of the entrance. Taxi, making tiny waves on the dark asphalt, she stopped at a tall old house where it once smelled of fresh buns from the nearby bakery, and the lamps on the landings burned steadily and without yeast. Now everything around seemed alien. The blurred lights of the headlights, the sharp sound of the windshield wipers, the whisper of the wind clogging the cracks in the window frames. Anya, she pressed the bundle with her newborn daughter to her chest, feeling how the tiny body warmed her chilled skin through the blanket. Palms, and tried to tune out the ringing alarm bell that was beating in her temples. Just 3 days ago, Shia was lying in a room that smelled of sterility and pink baby powder, and now, stepping through the puddles, she imagined how Sergei would greet them with a smile and a hot blanket. As he looks at the baby, his lips tremble slightly with tenderness and whispers, "Daughter, I've been waiting for you." Even a taxi I called in advance so that I could arrive just at the moment when he was supposed to return from work. I wanted the meeting turned out just like in her little dreams, which help her survive the contractions. The elevator creaked as it crawled upward, and each number on the dim display echoed with a thud. In the heart. Anya remembered how they pasted wallpaper here together, how they laughed, smearing glue on her cheeks, and like Sergei, putting his palm to her then still almost invisible belly, said, "We need to keep warm for the baby." The door swung open instantly, as if he knew from within that she would come right now. But instead of an embracing look, only the acrid smell of cold coffee burst through the opening and tobacco smoke. Sergei stood at the threshold in a crumpled t-shirt. His eyes were shining feverishly, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was not tenderness, but aloud, the cry filling the area, "Stop living at my expense." It was as if someone had hit you hard, right in the face. Then the words flew out like wallpaper torn off a wall. "I'm tired of carrying everything on myself. You can't save up enough money for your diapers and vitamins. The baby has turned you into a shadow. Just look at it." On herself. Anya stood there, unable to approach. The rain flowed down her hair, mixed with tears. Little Margarita sighed and stirred, as if she had felt a blow mother's pain. For a split second, Anya saw Sergei as he used to be, the one who brought her raspberry tea at night, stroke her belly and whispered fairy tales to the baby. But this picture instantly fell apart. In front of her was a strange man, tired, angry, as if his own life had fallen through the ice. He waved his hand toward the corridor. The words were like a shot, "Gather your rags and make room. I need to think about myself." A wave rose up inside, a shock, a sharp line of pain. Along the spine, but behind it there is a surprisingly cold determination. She felt the baby's pulse on her chest, more honest than any words. Without saying a reproach or please, she entered only to take what she could not survive the night without. A small stack of diapers, a pack of nappies, a folder with passports, a marriage certificate, and insurance policies. She grabbed the phone from the kitchen table, noting to herself that there were 3 missed calls from her mother-in-law on the screen and, feeling the weight of Serioja's condemning gaze on the back of her head, she turned sharply towards doors. The landing smelled of wet plaster. Someone opened the door from the next door, and a dim strip of light illuminated her red eyes. But she didn't even bother explain, just went down step by step, trying not to wake up daughter. The door slammed behind her, like a full stop put by someone's rude hand. Down at the entrance, water filled the sneaker. The sheaths of the knees trembled from fatigue. 2 days in the maternity hospital with a tiny person on my stomach. Then a long road and now emptiness. The taxi driver, seeing her smeared with rain face, asked if he should take her to the emergency room. But Anya, pulling on her familiar, smile faded, asked to stop at a 24-hour motel 2 blocks away. There, she remembered, there were free rooms. The small cheap lobby greeted us with the smell of washed clothes. Sheets. The student handed the party the key, looking sympathetically at the child. The number turned out to be a little more than a storage room. A narrow bed, a nightstand, a switch that sparked. But it was dry here. Anya, she sat down on the edge of the mattress and laid Margarita down next to her, making sure she was breathing evenly, and only then did she allow herself to exhale. The phone was shaking, and each vibration echoed in her chest, as if someone was banging on the closet door. Messages from the mother-in-law flashed on the screen. Tamara Konstantinovna. Seryozhenka feels bad because of your inaction. You must explain. Come back and don't disgrace the family. Anya turned off the sound, feeling the spicy taste of injustice rising again. Next to the phone lay a business card, in black confident letters. Lisa Dementova, lawyer, family law. Lisa had been her friend since her student days, when Anya was writing journalistic notes and Lisa was cramming codes. Over the past few months, her friend asked several times if he needed help. Saw how Seryozhka's eyes dimmed, how he became increasingly angry with delivery delayed in a traffic jam, how he broke into a scream when someone made noise behind the wall. Then Anya waved it off, hoping to straighten out life with her own warmth. Now, reminding herself that she has a child in her arms, and her heart is torn between horror and love. She dialed number. Lisa picked up the phone instantly, as if she hadn't slept at all. The conversation was short and devoid of unnecessary sentimentality. Lisa said she would come in the morning, and in the meantime Anya must record the circumstances, take a photo of her eyes swollen from tears, her wet clothes, and write down dictaphone a short story about what was happening. Anya was overwhelmed by emotions, but her voice girlfriend stretched like a strong rope over an abyss. Plan B, Lisa said. In a calm but firm tone, it does not suggest revenge, but justice, guardianship over apartment, alimony, security. And she added that she would take her to the notary, where you can sign the power of attorney before Sergei has time to come to his senses. When the receiver landed on a narrow white sheet, and didn't catch her reflection in the window glass. The dampness darkened her jacket, her hair stuck to her cheeks, there was a hint of fatigue in his eyes, but underneath it there was a strange, unfamiliar feeling of strength. Before she wrote articles about women who weathered storms, but she always thought that she herself would never find herself in the epicenter. Now, watching the baby turn her head, as if looking for source of heat, Anya understood the storm had begun, and she was responsible not only for herself, but also for this tiny little bundle that doesn't yet have words to ask for protection. The night dragged on slowly. The rain stopped, but somewhere under the roof it was dripping, making a monotonous drumbeat. Margarita woke up, demanding milk. Anya unzipped the baby, hugged her, feeling the calm return through the natural rhythm of feeding. A red sign of a pharmacy was blinking through the window in the distance, and in this even flickering it suddenly I saw the memory of my first meeting with Sergei, how he was walking along the university corridor, hurrying to a lecture, and shiv a stack of notes, and then spent the whole night helping to sort out the mixed-up pages. It was this smile that made her fall in love then. The promise that he would be reliable. This the memory pricked, revealing an old grudge. Somewhere along the way they both lost that which the future is built from. The phone shook again. This time Lisa sent short message. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I will take the application forms and the act form eviction. Hold on. You've already taken the first step. Anya leaned back against the headboard, closed her eyes and for the first time in many hours allowed the tears to find their way. But this were no longer the tears of a victim. They flowed like rain, washing away the old paint from the facade, giving way to something new. She whispered, "We'll manage, Ritochka." As if in response, the baby swallowed the milk and sighed thinly. Closer to dawn, Anya recorded photos of a wet suitcase on the threshold of that very house, which I took on the stairs. I recorded them on a dictaphone in a quiet but in a firm voice. On June 8, 2025, my husband kicked me out of the apartment and refused let back in. Witness. Neighbors on the 5th floor heard screams. These words sounded like an oath to herself. At 6 a.m., the motel was finally plunged into the drowsy twilight, and she allowed herself to doze off, holding the baby on the warm side of the bed, as if protecting him from any noises of the world. An hour later the door creaked. Lisa entered without knocking, holding in her hands a thermos of hot green tea and a folder with yellow stickers. Her face flashed a businesslike but warm expression of a man who came not only as a lawyer, but also like a friend. She put the bag down, watching as Anya carefully placed her daughter in an improvised cradle from a thrown-back blanket and quietly said, "He hasn't realized yet what he did, but he will understand." Anya nodded, feeling a certain something straighten up inside her. Axis. Fear and anger, bitterness and hope were mixed in her, but all of this was melted into a thread of determination. I imagined how Sergei would wake up, find an empty bed, see drops of water from her shoes on the linoleum and emptiness. Then he will find an envelope under the door with the seal of the law firm. A morning surprise that will turn the usual the order of things. Lisa laid out the papers, explaining that it was important not to leave the emotions to the will. It is necessary to document every detail, draw up an inventory of the property, impose a temporary ban on the sale of the apartment, file a statement about the elements. Anya listened, and for the first time in hours I felt that Haz was taking shape in a plan, clear articles, points, signatures. At the end of the explanation, Lisa looked up. Ready? Anya, pressing her palm to her daughter's warm tummy, replied, Yes, he will get his morning. And these words made her breathe easier. When the clock on the wall flashed 8:59, they stepped out into the cool morning. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick, as if the city was still deciding what today's event would turn out to be. There was a taxi on the sidewalk, new, clean, and Anya, while seating Margarita in a childcar seat, noticed a reflection in the mirror rear view. Her hair is loose. Her face is tired, but her eyes are shining. In this look the story of a woman's weakness was read, which, having passed through the flames, turned into a quiet but unshakable steel. The car started moving, and along with its movement, that invisible a process that was supposed to dot the A's. Sergei had only one option left an hour before waking up, and Anya almost physically felt how the seconds were counting down until the moment when his world will be split by the same envelope with the lawyer's signature. That's how their long night and the main story about feelings that have been tested began betrayal and about the fragile, barely born love of mother and child, which became an impregnable fortress against rude shouts and other people's accusations. The taxi rushed through the grey morning, and each the unevenness of the road echoed in Anya's spine. It was as if two incompatible worlds existed inside her. One is a warm cocoon of the sounds of Margarita's sighs. The other is a cold hum of thoughts about that all savings can disappear in an instant if Sergei manages to intercept access to the shields. She leaned her forehead against the fogged glass, looking at the flashing signs of bakeries and pharmacies, and felt how tired spreads out like a heavy blanket, and after birth, the hormones rise to the point of tears feminine tenderness, then fall into a hot pit of anxiety. Nearby, Lisa quickly leafed through the documents on the tablet. It seemed that her fingers moved faster than her thoughts, but her voice remained soft. She said that the notary already knows that Anya will sign the power of attorney using an accelerated procedure, and that it is better to prepare a request right away to the local police officer. Otherwise Sergei will say that she left without any reason. In words, the maternal instinct of the friend was superimposed, which opened up to its full extent when Margarita quietly squeaked. Anya is here. I touched the child's cheek and felt the warmth, making sure that everything was okay, and only then returned to the plan. On the way, they stopped at a 24-hour supermarket. Lisa ran for a bottle of water and an energy bar, and Anya, left alone for a minute, allowed her memory to take her away into the corridors of past years. Even before the pregnancy, Sergei was different. He laughed heartily when Anya read other people's news, cloning their intonations, and called her my voice of the air. He was proud of her editorial awards. At first, he smiled when my mother-in-law joked about a man's wallet, but then these phrases got under my skin, hardened into the belief that each new pair of diapers is a figurative stone thrown around his neck. Tamara Konstantinovna she called every day, asking if Anya was taking too much from her son, and even sent articles about how wives ruin their husbands with their whims. At some point, Anya remembered that Sergei returned from work with a new word. Izdavenko said it with ruthless ease, as if he were trying on a new outfit. Then I thought it was a one-time slip of the tongue, but the word took root. The second and third trimesters he seemed to be counting expenses, adding up receipts, sighing out loud over prices. His career was on the rise. He became a project manager at a major holding. But the demands on status also grew. Restaurant dinners, expensive watches, discussions about supporting a woman it's outdated. And every time Anya reminded him that the child was theirs, he frowned. I will pay fairly, but not for excess. Then she still believed that love will survive this imbalance. The taxi pulled up at the notary's office. Svetly the facade, the glass doors, the lobby smelled of fresh coffee. Lisa, without wasting time, went up to the administrator, a young woman with a turquoise scarf, who already had forms ready. While filled out forms, Anya did not let go of her daughter. The warm heartbeat of the child kept her from panicking. The lines in the documents merged into monotonous waves, but Lisa commented on every word. Power of attorney to represent interests, legal recourse to the courts, prohibition dispose of property without the consent of the principal. When it came to signing, Anya felt a strange lightness, as if this grove separates yesterday's dependence from tomorrow's freedom. The pen slipped. Ink flashed on paper, and the notary's seal shattered doubts into dust. Next the point was Lisa's parents' summer house, converted into a small office. There all her application templates were stored. By midday the sky had cleared, the sun's sparkling puddles were being thrown up, and Anya, getting out of the car, suddenly noticed how things had become paints, the blue of the dome of the old church, the bright green roofs of the garages. Probably, she thought, maternal strength is manifested not only in the protection of offspring, but also in the ability to look at the world anew, even when it crumbles into pieces. In the living room, filled with stacks of books, Lisa outlined a plan of action. The first was to ask the local police officer. She had already dialed the duty station number and described the fact in a dry, precise tone. Forced eviction at such and such an apartment, adding that witnesses had recordings of screams. By evening, the district police officer promised to come and record the report. The second step is to freeze the accounts. Lisa connected to online bank, logged in on the basis of a power of attorney and applied for a temporary block on transactions over 50,000 rubles. Standard measure in a dispute over jointly acquired property. The main thing, get ahead of him, she whispered, not taking her eyes off the screen. Third, divorce notice and alimony claims. Lisa printed 3 copies. One will be sent to couriers with a list of attachments, the second by email with a delivery note, and the third will be handed over personally through a notary. Anya watched as one after another appeared pages with her maiden name, the familiar but long-forgotten Anisimov, and with each new seal in the margins it was as if a new wall was being built to protect a small family. By mid-afternoon, Margarita woke up, making a thin AGU, and Anya dove into the anxious chores, changed the diaper, warmed up a bottle of expressed milk in the microwave milk, checked the temperature with her wrist. Lisa watched with a warm smile. You turn any action into a ritual of calm, she noted. And Anya, for the first time in 24 hours, allowed herself to quietly laugh. It was at that moment that a light knock was heard behind the door, and a tall, slightly stooped man with a folder under his arm and an intricate model of a building foam board in his other hand. He was embarrassed to see the guests, but Lisa gestured invited me in. Anya, meet David, my neighbor and an architect. Anya automatically adjusted her hair, holding her daughter in the crook of her elbow. David nodded, his eyes sliding to the child. There was no pity in them, no idle curiosity, only quiet admiration. What a babe, he said, then apologized for the intrusion and explained that makes a rendering of Lisa's future apartment. But, looking at the improvised cardboard box, cradle on the sofa, suddenly said, I have a real cradle at home. My daughter doesn't need it anymore. I can bring it. Lisa beamed, and Anya felt a slight warmth of gratitude, as if an invisible seam connected her to this almost stranger. Hart responded not as a woman to a man, but as a mother to a father who remembers the price of quiet nights in an uncomfortable cradle. David left, promising to return in the evening. Lisa, closing the door behind him, winked. He has been through a lot, knows what it's like to raise a child alone. Wani trembled. The story of someone else's pain always somehow alleviates one's own. She plunged back into her work routine, making copies of passports, scanning certificates from the maternity hospital, and writing down contacts. Neighbors on a dictaphone. All this turned into armor. In the second half day, Lisa suggested taking a break. Endorphins are part of the plan too. They went out the deserted veranda of the house, where the veteran grapes were already putting out their first tendrils. Anya, holding Margarita on her shoulder, she looked at the sunspots on the boards and thought about how strangely quickly the heart grows up women when she needs to protect a child. Just a couple of days ago she considered herself a happy, if tired, wife. And now a hardness was rising in her, like a steel pond inside. She was catching herself that she was no longer crying. The tears had dried up, giving way to active clarity. In essence, she felt an almost physical separation of the times before and after the eviction, and the uncertainty of whose the words purse and surplus gnawed at her soul. After a clear, mathematical verified must be done. Mother warrior, who was ready to calculate steps to the centimeter. Returning to the house, they waited for the local police officer. The elderly captain in an awkward uniform listened attentively to Anya's explanation, checked the information from the neighbors, wrote down in the protocol the words of Stepan Ivanovich from the 5th floor. The shouts were, the husband was swearing, the child was crying. Then the local police officer took a photo of the signed Anya, took her suitcases to the motel, wrote down the checkout time and left a copy of the document. Lisa sighed with satisfaction. The most critical step for the evidence base had been taken. Towards evening, the phone rang indoor. David, a little out of breath, brought in a wooden white cradle on wheels, varnished with a barely with noticeable star patterns. He said that he built it himself, polished a timber right in the middle of the night shifts when his wife was in the hospital with the threat of premature labor. The wife did not survive. The words hung in the air briefly and silently, and Anya felt in her chest tiny prickly knot of sympathy. David placed the cradle near the sofa, checked, so that the wheel lock was secure, and quietly walked towards the exit. He turned around at the door. "If you need me, I'm here." These words did not become a promise of anything more than solidarity, but she felt them becoming a brick in her new wall of support. Twilight, operating the headquarters, moved into the kitchen. An aromatic candle with a scent flickered on the table. Juniper. They turned off the electric light to put Margarita to bed, not disturbing the baby's vision. Anya rocked the cradle with one press of her foot, while studying the court schedule Lisa had compiled. Tomorrow, the courier will deliver the notice to Sergei. The bank will review the blocking the day after tomorrow, and by the end of the week will set a date for the first hearing on interim measures. A sense of growing power over her own life was spreading inside her. She understood that there were kilometers of hikes ahead by authorities. Tears, sleepless nights, but I knew something else. Like a quiet motor under skin, the mother strength will push her to go further. Lisa stirred her tea without sugar with a spoon and said that Tamara Konstantinovna, judging by social networks, is now in her country house and saws firewood for the barbecue, not suspecting that her tomorrow morning, my beloved son will be handed an envelope with the words court notice. Anya smiled. All that was left of her mother-in-law's wealth was the loud crunch of the shell. A real anthill of problems was hidden inside. She remembered how Tamara 3 years back at a family dinner she jokingly said, "A woman can either give birth or work. Let the son not spend money on both luxuries." Then Sergei laughed, and Anya giggled too, deciding, a stupid joke. Any small needle grows, if it is not taken out immediately. By midnight they had finalized the details, agreed on electronic signature on all subsequent documents so that Anya could sign from anywhere. We assigned responsibilities. Lisa is in charge of legal work. Line. Anya collects income certificates, polishes her portfolio of articles, to go to remote projects. The baby dozed in the cradle, and a candle flickered nearby, casting a soft oval light on the wooden sides with carved moons and stars. Anya, suddenly I caught myself feeling as if this yellow circle of light was a future an island in the middle of a big dark water. So many nights ahead, but each one will have little light. Before going to bed, they double-checked the email tracker. Notification delivered. Pending. Receipt. Lisa pressed send and nodded. The chain was launched. All that remains is to wait until morning. They climbed the creaky stairs to the second floor. Lisa handed Anya a spare pair of pajamas, reminded her that rest was part of the strategy. But sleep was slow. Anya lay in the darkness, listening to the baby's bloody breathing, and thoughts lined up in a segment of life's path. First date with Sergei. First daughter's cry, her husband's first cry at her. The last straw tonight. I involuntarily put my palm on my stomach, feeling the emptiness after pregnancy, not physical, but some kind of spatial, as if there was room inside for an unknown distant life. "We'll cope," she whispered. Smiling slightly, the words now sounded not like a mantra, but a verdict. The night was fading. Outside the window the silence of the suburban street grew, in which only the occasional motorcycle rattled. Lisa was already asleep, but Anya got up, went to the small table where all the signed papers lay, and once again ran her fingers over line of her last name, made sure the ink was dry. At that moment I remembered a dream from home. She runs along a long corridor, where the walls, from the count for utilities, for a baby carriage, for bathroom repairs. Every piece of paper slaps her cheeks, but at the end of the corridor, suddenly, her daughter's tiny hand waves, and then the papers flare up and turn into white butterflies. Perhaps a dream prophetic. Everything that is crushed will turn into an opportunity to fly, if they are not afraid of fire. Half an hour before dawn, the candle burned out, leaving a thin smoky spiral. Anya moved Margarita to her side, sat in a chair and gave her breast. Warm, unblinking the child's gaze made all the folds of fatigue straighten out inside. The corners of the lips automatically stretched upward. In the flickering twilight she quietly promised, "We will never ask for a place in the sun again. We will build it ourselves." Then she closed her eyes, and the light of the future morning slowly seeped through the curtains. the light that carries the envelope with the lawyer's signature straight to the threshold of their past life. The grey pre-dawn glow seeped through the loosely closed blinds and spilled through the bedroom where Sergei, who fell asleep at 3 o'clock at night to the measured ticking of the old clock, now woke up from emptiness. The right side of the bed was smooth. On the blanket there was not a single fold left, as if no one had ever lain next to him, soaking the mattress with their warmth. He sat up, pen hand across his face, surprised by the ringing in his ears. Too much nicotine and too little air, and automatically felt for the phone. No messages about Anya, no photos baby, no questions about how you are. Just the alarm clock 0700. Conference call marketing department twitched the screen and immediately went out. Sergei he stood up, feeling heavy, as if his body had been filled with lead overnight, and walked along corridor to the kitchen. On the table, where the morning Arabica usually smoked, there was a frozen mug, half of a single serving of stale coffee. A rim of dark liquid he huddled like a dried stain. He tugged at the cup, but the liquid splashed coldly. Why was she even here? He couldn't remember if he'd drunk that cup at night or poured it in the morning. Earlier. The caffeine didn't give any clarity. It smelled like yesterday's tobacco smoke. He opened it sluggishly. Window and breathed in the damp June air. At that moment, a sharp hum of the motorcycle broke the silence of the entrance, and Sergei noticed that the front door opened by 1 millimeter, as if the postman had just pushed something inside. Raising an eyebrow, he walked out into the corridor and saw under the threshold a sand-colored envelope, constrained by Dementiev's seal and partner. It was as if the heart had been shoved under a press. The handwriting of a law firm recognized her instantly. Once, before the wedding, he fantasized that this was exactly the firm would handle his future investments. But now the logo looked at him like cynical grin. His fingers trembled as he picked up the paper. The envelope seemed heavy, as if it contained a lead tile rather than documents. He threw it on the kitchen table, ripped the edge and pulled out 3 sheets. The first notice filing a divorce petition, stamp of the court office and bold date the 9th of June, 2025. The second copy of the application for collection of alimony for a minor child Margarita Sergeevna Grimova. At the top is an inventory applications. At the bottom is the signature of Dementova's lawyer. The third sheet, written in dry in official language, had a loud title, Act of Recording the Unilateral Eviction of a Spouse with a Minor Child. Under the act of signature of the district police officer of 2 neighbors, a photographic printout that very wet staircase. All the words were blurry before his eyes, but he saw main illegal eviction, endangering the life of a child, recommend to the court take precautionary measures. His throat was dry. He washed away his thirst with a mug. Coffee turned out to be disgustingly cold, twitched the muscles of his face so that his eyebrows were compressed into a line. His first movement was to dial Mom. A sleepy voice broke through the hiss of the speaker. Tamara Konstantinovna. She hasn't yet managed to cook her usual oatmeal jelly. Sergei spoke quickly. She filed for divorce. She slapped the receivers like a spoon. Fell on the table. Mother hissed, "Don't take this seriously, Seryozha. This is women's games, you know. She'll come back and confess. The kid will tie her up and will make you beg." The son, having latched onto this explanation, began to walk in circles back and forth across the kitchen. His bare heels slapped the cold laminate flooring and he repeated, "Of course, that flash will come back. Hormones." But the gaze involuntarily fell on the seals, on the phrase to collect alimony, and the mother's piece melted like ice in the palms of his hands. He still wanted to believe that it was a joke, but the lawyer's signature broke the illusion. Mother insisted. "Call her. Tell her it's empty. This paper means nothing. She still loves you." He nodded into the void, although the receiver had already been disconnected. Irritation flared up like a match. He dialed her number, his hand was shaking, but instead of Anya's soft yes, an official female voice, distinctly clear. Grimova Anna does not allow personal communication without agreement with a lawyer. If the question is of an official nature, identify yourself. Sergei asked, "Is this Lisa?" "Yes, Dementieva. I represent Anya's interests. How can I help you?" He croaked. "Tell her I'm ready to sort everything out. Let him put an end to this circus. Why court cases right away? Anna Sergeyevna is ready for mediation meeting, but first the threats must be stopped and the fact of eviction must be acknowledged," the lawyer replied. In each her word was embedded with the crisp ice of the law. Sergei tried to lift voice. "Threats? What nonsense," she left herself. In the act that you hold, it is stated in detail what tone you use to communicate. The protocol was prepared in 2 witnesses. Sergei squeezed the phone. I won't let her take my money. It's about standard elements in the amount of a quarter of income per child. If you want a different format, the court will determine. At that moment a fire flared up in my chest. Humiliation. No one had ever spoken to him so calmly and at the same time so imperiously. He threw the phone down so that the metal hit the table and bounced off. And the tap flickered. It was rushing around the apartment. The room Margaritas, which only yesterday had been decorated with pink clouds on the walls and a musical mobile, looked offensively empty. A crib without a mattress, a changing table without diapers. A toy bunny with the torn tag dropped his head, as if he too had been accused of parasitism. Sergei remembered how just 2 weeks ago he had been working on this room, hammering in shelves to prove, maybe, the perfect father. And now it seemed like a warm dream. He called his mother again. There is a lawyer. She is serious. What to do? Tamara choked on indignation. How? What? We have money. We will find our own legal support. We'll show that she left on her own, that you're stressed, have work, this child is in your alone. She became impudent. Sergei, seizing on the idea, opened laptop, started digging through contacts, but understood, the official act of eviction, signed by the police, trumps any stories. He remembered screaming, like the door slammed, and a chill ran down my spine. Logic told me, there was little chance against the documents. Meanwhile, in the bright kitchen of Lisa's house, and not with a phone in her right hand, Nils was on the State Services portal and at the same time rocked the cradle with her foot. Margarita tried to fall asleep after the morning feeding. The screen showed, an application for monthly child care allowance, accepted. Lisa, noticing Anya, took a deep breath and asked wordlessly, with raised eyebrows. She explained, this is the first time I'm asking for money, not from myself or my husband, but from the state. But this is not humiliating. I feel like I'm setting up supports. Lisa nodded and took out her wallet. I have a client who spends his nights reading an architecture magazine and is looking for a freelance editor. Here's the address. Write to him. Portfolio. Anya recalled her articles, notes on urban studies, which she loved before maternity leave and for the first time in many months felt the muscles of inspiration move as if they had been defrosted. Meanwhile, Sergei was sinking deeper and deeper into disaster. His department at the holding company had to submit a report in an hour, and he turned on the laptop to enter the last numbers. But his hands were sweating, the cursor was shaking, the document with the alimony cast a shadow. The plan to convince Anya was breaking in my head. Come back at least temporarily until he hires a PR lawyer, or pay her in his own way, but not under trial. He called Lisa again. Let's do it without trial. I'm ready pay if she comes home. The answer was, she already has a place to live and temporary registration. Return is not considered. Do you want to pay? Transfer to the account. We will accept the voluntary procedure if you sign the agreement. However, the mediator's meeting scheduled for Friday. The voice is calm, like the voice of the weather reporter. Anya's phone rang. Lisa sent the time of the mediation session. Anya closed browser, brought her palm to her chest. She suddenly felt a strange stone marriage. The milk came down more slowly. The daughter was nervous, confirming by grabbing lactation crises. She called the doctor who had previously consulted her in online chat, anxiously described that the amount of milk had dropped. The pediatrician responded confidently, more water, rest, skin to skin, and don't be nervous. But the moment when the breast seems empty fills the mother with horror. Anya put Margarita on her bare chest. In such a way the child's breath embraced the small body. Whispered, the milk will come. And inside herself she strengthened the same phrase, the resources will come. Gradually the milk ducts relaxed, the little nipples returned, and she breathed a sigh of relief. The lack of milk would have broken the sense of control. By lunchtime, Sergei's mobile rang, the HR department. We received subcontractor bankruptcy notice, budget cut. We offer temporary go part-time. The words cut through his eardrums. He, the manager, accustomed to dictating budgets, now listened to others dictate to him. The world is turned over for several hours like an amber jellyfish. From top to bottom, emptiness. Jumped into his shoes, jumped out to at least breathe, walked to the park where he used to run in the mornings. There were benches wet, the air gurgled. He dialed Lisa again. Listen, I lost half salary. What alimony? Let her come back. Lisa replied, the size alimony is determined by a percentage, not an absolute. A decrease in income is your risk. But in case of threats, the court may set a fixed sum higher, taking into account the child's needs. Sergei seemed to have encountered a cold wall. No flexibility. Lisa's apartment was filled with the faint smell of baking. David, who looked in with a chop drawing, brought a warm apple pie. He shrugged sheepishly shoulders. The company's cut accidentally mixed up the sizes. Had to reorder, and the pie. Compensation for noise at 3 a.m. Anya thanked him. The red crust of the pie smelled of childhood. David glanced at the laptop where Anya was editing an architectural article. You are the author. Amazing breakdown paragraphs. For the first time in many years, she felt the call of her profession echoes with warmth along the spine. David left, and she poured herself some tea and, not I hurriedly reread each line, weaving in my personal sense of space. She described how the windows in children's institutions should face the sun so that the children have enough light. And each the line became a mirror of her new life. Emptiness was replaced by light. Thursday was marked by preparation. Lisa brought a memo to the mediation participant. Speak clearly, do not go overboard personal, offer specifics. Anya read and laughed. It's hard not to go over on a personal level when it comes to someone who kicked you out in the middle of the night with a baby. But she rehearsed, I came to negotiate the best for the child. At night she again felt the rough dryness. Chris was growing in her chest again. She remembered the advice. Put a warm towel, relax, don't think about the trial. Margarita was sleeping, but Anya went out balcony, pressed the canvas, looked at the moon. Her breathing synchronized with movement of the clouds. The milk began to come, as if the world were responding to the same rhythm. The door creaked quietly behind him. Lisa checked to see if everything was okay, and once she was sure, she left without disturbing the silence. Friday morning scattered the light of warm tones of Entar. In the mediator's office, the walls were the color of warm milk. On the table there was a glass jug of water and bright blue glasses. Anya entered first. Margarita was left under the supervision of assistant Lisa behind the wall. She felt how under her suit jacket the thin fabric of the top clings to the spine, but the shoulders are held straight. Sergei came in a minute later. His eyes were red, as if he hadn't slept. His lower lip was twitching. Mediator. A woman of about 50 with a thoughtful look suggested, let's define the goals of the meeting. Anya, no waiting for Sergei, she said in one breath. A child should have a stable connection with both parents and live in safety. Sergei wanted to seize the initiative, but he hesitated. He was not used to starting. He said, I want to see my daughter without restrictions. Lisa quietly added, we agree, but in this case, harsh expressions in the presence of the child and meetings no later than 9 in the evening are unacceptable. While the baby is so small. The mediator nodded, recording. The dialogue lasted for an hour and a half. Sergei tried to wave the words. I supported her, she left on her own, let her come back. Anya answered point by point. The bill was $400. I only bought a first aid kit and a baby seat. I left after your refusal to let us into the house, where we won't be kicked out. The mediator asked focus. What is the meeting model? In the end, Lisa formulated 3 hours once a week on neutral territory with the possibility of revision after 4 months. Sergei wanted more, but saw that refusing under threat of trial would be worse. The mediation protocol is voluntary, but the court decision will be harsher. In its confusion flashed in his eyes, confirmed by reality. A woman, on the contrary, will not flinch. In the end, when the papers lay in front of them, Sergei signed, but his hand slipped, leaving a blot. The mediator thought that this was not reason to cancel the signature. Anya brought out the exact grove, under which it was read control over her life. She was not happy about Serioja's weakness, she was happy about her balance. Handing over the signed protocol, the mediator said, the next step is to approve it in court. If both parties do not violate, the judge will only assure. Sergei nodded, but his gaze was unfocused. Fatigue and crushed expectations did their job. When they left the office, Sergei wanted something to say. Perhaps the usual let's talk alone. But there was Eliza, and Anya literally read the movement of her shoulders. Not now. Sergei lowered his hands, as if he had lost not only his wife, but also the script he had lived by. He stepped towards parking lot, got into the car and drove away, leaving behind a ball of dust. Anya looked at him, followed, and suddenly felt a slight pity, but not for the man, for the way he was once when he held her notes and laughed at the mistakes. 10 seconds later the pity evaporated. The timer in the baby bag beeped. Feeding time. In the evening, already at Lisa's house, Anya laid out copies of the protocol on the table. Protocol mediation agreement on the procedure for communication with the child, schedule, signatures, seal, and most of the lines were written from her words. She put the document in plastic folder, on top of which she placed a photograph of Margarita taken this morning. The child was smiling, a little with her mouth slightly open, as if she felt victory. Anya closed the lid, as if slamming it shut. Head. There was no euphoria inside. There was a quiet, confident hum, like transformer that supplied the house. She exhaled, adjusted the strap of the cradle, and Margarita stretched sleepily, pressing herself against the edge with stars. Anya whispered, without emphasizing the words, slit over the heart. We took the first big step. From here on out, only forward. In the hall, the district court is stuffy with a cluster of bodies and trembling emotions. Dusty openwork radiators under the windowsills, the air heats up. On the walls are faded portraits of jurors of the last century. And the whole space seems to be glued together by the tart smell of over-roasted coffee from the machine in corridor. Judge Volkova, a short woman with a chiseled profile and a gavel, which has already become an extension of a palm, asks the parties to stand up. The hearing on the case Gromova versus Gromova is declared open. Lisa and Anya rise synchronously. Anya's hands clench into a lock, but her nails don't dig into her skin. The pain has been building up months. Now a stable evenness comes to replace it. Sergei, sitting on the left, straightens up and glances at her as if he wants to catch her emotion. But in Anya's eyes there is only a calm blaze. The internal furnace is not heated, not resentment, but the conviction that today the last door of the past is closing. Sergei goes first. His lawyer, a tall man with hair wet with varnish, lists the repair costs. Baby, the cost of the stroller and the amount of bills paid during pregnancy, trying to prove that only he invested. He pushes Sergei and he, having gained courage, says that Anya decided to sit on his neck, that freelancing is not a job that if she came back he would provide, but she chose a dubious one, independence. Words fly around the hall like wet rags, and for each stressed syllable Sergei grabs hold of it as if it were a life preserver. Lisa gives a signal and the judge nods. The mother's advocate gets the floor. She stands up, adjusts her rimless glasses, and in a quiet but firm tone he reads out a certificate from the publishing house's accounting department, in which Anya wrote columns about urban studies for 2 years before her pregnancy. Monthly income of 62,000 rubles. Fees for additional projects. Sheet for a sheet of paper is laid on the table and each antidote against the label and the waiter. Then extracts an extract from public services. Already approved benefit and first transfers for freelance. Work in an architectural bureau. The hall is moving. The myth of the slacker is melting. Lisa steps forward, picks up another document, a color copy of the eviction document. With large letters on it, words of creating a threat to life and health are indicated. Her voice is equal. The defendant threw the institute out on the stairwell on the 31st day after giving birth. After a pause, like a blow to the silence, she adds, not a single check during the pregnancy exceeded the amount covered, a joint card, replenished by both. Sergei twitches, tries something say, but the judge raises his hand. Order. Anya feels like inside the cold iron of anxiety melts, turning into liquid confidence. She does not look back at him, looks into the eyes of the female judge, trying to convey her truth with an unblinking gaze. At some moment Volkova asks Anya to give a personal explanation. Anya gets up. The heel gently, the linoleum clicks. The heart beats no louder than the hum of the ventilation. She remembers the night of the birth. The icy window of the delivery room, the neonatology team. Her fingers frantically reach for the phone, but Sergei did not answer, because at that moment he was discussing an order for a buffet for a corporate event parties. For a moment, a birthing lamp flashes before my eyes, sterile green light, her scream, and an empty space next to her. Inhale. She says she understands. A man who can turn away at the moment of greatest vulnerability has no right to decide her fate further. He speaks quietly, but every phrase cuts through the air. Volkova nods as if registering not only the facts, but also the emotional truth. After a short break, the judge returns with a seal in his hands. The decision is announced in a drawn-out manner. The marriage is dissolved. The child remains with the mother. Alimony, 25 of the defendant's official income plus compensation payments. Section Property. The apartment is transferred to Anya with the obligation to pay Sergei a quarter of his assessment, but the court, taking into account the eviction, provides a 5-year installment plan. Additionally, a temporary ban on approaching closer than 200 without Anya's written consent, and obligation to take an anger management course. A small but important phrase. The decree comes into force immediately. Anya sits down on a chair, her palms are hot, but the look is clear, like a trace of a brush on a freshly wiped board. Sergei rubs his neck. His lawyer whispers that it can be appealed, but at that moment on his phone goes off with a notification. The holding's corporate communications department demands an explanation. Partners withdrew the scam reputational risks. He understands that rumors about the court decision already in journalistic chats. Cheap journalism has defeated the director's career on projects. A chain of events clicks in his head. In the first seconds he gets angry at Anya, but the next thought cuts. He shouted out the words that passed from his lips neighbors in the act. On the way out of the court, Lisa hugs Anya with one hand. We did this. But instead of euphoria there is a warm fatigue, as if after a marathon. They are seeing off Sergei with a glance. He quickly moves away, as if afraid to meet eyes. Entrance of the court, his selfie lover, a blogger friend, tries to shove a microphone. Asks, "How will you comment?" Sergei throws it away with a blow of his palm, thus confirming the title of the upcoming article. In 2 days, Anya moves into a rented one-room apartment. On a quiet street behind the park there are high ceilings, an old oak floor. The windows are a little cracky, but the view is to the clouds. Friends help. Lisa drags a box of books, children's poetry, and urban design. David lifts the cradle, now supplemented a quiet white noise generator that he built himself to help the baby sleep deeper. Lisa jokes that it's Christina without crosses. There is no priest, there are friends and lime cake. The candles are not church candles, but scented gift boxes instead of icons, packs of diapers and stock cotton diapers. Anya pours tea with mint into mugs. The smell of oranges dissolves in the air. She made compote, and for the first time since giving birth she cooks for me in a hurry. In the tiny living room, David screws a mobile to the ceiling. Thin laser stars rotate like this slowly, so that the room seemed to have a planetary breath. David says in a half-whisper that he found this idea in Scandinavian eco-design, where children's sleep is associated with the rhythm of the overhead light. Anya smiles with gratitude, and there the glances converge for a moment, not with sparks of passion, but with a warm ray of hope that life can be soft. Evening turns into night, friends disperse. Lisa leaves documents in the kitchen drawer, slyly noting that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. exactly when you will receive an email from the agency confirming your first fee. David lingers last, helps to secure the blackout curtain. In front of the door he wished, "Let this city now play by your rules," and she suddenly understands how important words are that recognize your autonomy. He leaves, leaving behind a light scent of tree resin, as if to remind us that furniture and houses are built from durable material. It's midnight. The refrigerator hums quietly. The lamp on the table casts a yellow spot on unfolded laptop. Anya looks through the plan of the freelance project. 20 articles about smart cities for the international portal. Terms 3 months. Fee amount, comparable to her previous monthly salaries. She sets goals for the article in 4 days. Night windows for editing, daytime breaks, exclusively time for margaritas. The screen flickers, reminding about the schedule of the meeting with the client, but in breasts even warmth of satisfaction. Now all the lines of the graph belong to her. In the next room, Margarita breathes measuredly. The stars of the mobile phone cast soft shadows on her cheek. Anya closes the lid of the laptop, the lock clicks, as if completing the first chapter of a new volume. She goes to the window. The city behind him lives with the precious pearl shimmer of neon advertisements and yellowish lanterns along the alleys. From here, it seems that instead of Haas, an endless field of possibilities. She presses her palm to the cool glass and can almost hear the river murmuring outside under the bridge, where invisible trains in the darkness carry away other people's stories. History remains here and is now dictated by it. Returning to the bedroom, she strokes the side of the cradle. A child's sleep is the most vulnerable melody, and Anya carefully adjusts his breathing to Margaret's rhythm. On the bedside table lies an envelope the color of wet sand, the same one that had thrown the house into chaos, and now sealed new seal. District Court. Case closed. The paper inside no longer sticks. Anna is like a dried leaf after a thunderstorm. Anya places the flax containing the envelope under a small lamp or branch, a symbol that conflicts can turn into fertilizer for new roots. She whispers, "Now I dictate our life," and the words do not sound as a show of force, but as a quiet treaty with the world. The dark window confirms, the city agrees. The moon rises above the rooftops, throwing a silver square onto the floor through a gap in the curtain. In this inner spot of light, the worlds of the past and future are folded like coordinates. Anya sits down on the edge of the bed, feeling a slight postpartum tingling in the muscles, but realizing that starting the journey again is not a burden, but privilege. She turns off the lamp, the silence becomes denser, enveloping. In this thick blue you can hear a car honking somewhere far away, and condensation dripping from the air conditioner. All this is the background against which their new story will grow. Looking back one last time on the envelope with the stamp, the matter is completed. Anya closes her eyes. There, behind the eyelids, the point of the future glows with fatigue, and it blazes exactly like the first spark stars of David's mobile above the cradle. Exactly 1 year has passed since that June trial, and the city carefully turned the pages of the calendar, shading the past pages with a light dust, as if everything that once seemed like an unbearable burden was in fact preparation for today's ease. On the morning of the last Saturday in May, Anya woke up not from an alarming phone call, but from muffled laughter. Margarita. The little one had already learned to stand up in her crib and, rising on her toes, called her mother quietly, "Mom." Fresh spring clouds stretched out through the window. The sun's rays cut through the room in stripes, and in these ribbon-like light the strings of dust danced as freely as Anya's heart. Internal currents of fear had long since dissolved. She hugged her daughter close, inhaling the scent of milk, apple shampoo, and something almost metaphysical, the certainty that the house had finally ceased to be a place of trials and had become a quiet haven. In the kitchen, the drip coffee pot, which she called a little motor of happiness, was beating rhythmically, and every drop, hitting the glass jug, as if putting periods after all the unbearable sentences of the past. Having moved to this, Anya transformed a rented, but already fully occupied apartment from the old bachelor pad of the previous owner into a bright studio where everyone the corner reflected their new life. The walls were lined with 3 shades of light linen. Above the desk were corkboards with colourful notes about deadlines and free lectures on urban studies. And in the children's area the same mobile, given to me by David, was spinning smoothly, added now with light wings made of wax paper, which they cut out together during the winter holidays, when Margarita was still just rolled over onto her stomach. There were volumes of Haruki on the bookshelf nearby Murakami, between the selected works of Jan Gehl and the children's album My First Steps, where Anya meticulously pasted photographs of her daughter at the moment of each opening. The first tooth, the first and independent step towards Mom, the first funny arrow when she tried to repeat The Architect. David, who during this time became Orbit's best friend, and not only a friend, but rather a quiet companion, like a planet, rotating nearby, visited them on weekends, bringing thick bags of white and blue origami paper because he thought it was developing children's motor skills through joint folding. They sat like that in the evenings. Margarita creaked with a plastic pyramid, instead of editing another article about urban landscaping, and David rustled paper, building graceful cranes that he then hung from his mobile. Each figure seemed to add a layer of protection against the old storms. Over the course of a year, Anya wrote 28 articles, 2 large analytical works and 1 a short guide on how young mothers can return to the profession without losing themselves. This guide unexpectedly sold out electronically and led to her being invited to teach a course in a free online school of true urban planning. Sergei's situation fell apart into knots, which he tried to tighten, but the line snapped. The holding company that lost the contract reshuffled departments and cut his salary to the same quarter that was now leaving at the state expense Anya. Gradually he himself asked to change the position, and then he took unpaid leave and left, as friends wrote, for his free time swimming. Occasionally, at strictly designated hours, he would come to the playground of the children's centre, where Anya brought Margarita to meet her father. An hour and a half of playing under the supervision of a mediator. At first he tried to joke loudly and generously, hoping by love with candy and bright rattles, but the child was more drawn to the soft stability of the mother. In the moment the recognition of inevitability became the strongest sting for Sergei, and the meetings now they passed quietly. He put on a funny hat, a rocket, crawled on the carpet, and after saying goodbye he slowly walked away, watching his daughter waving her hand, already skillfully balancing on 2 legs. Anya saw change, the anger fizzled out, replaced by a dull regret. But in his eyes there still shone a spark of determination to at least be a good father, even though the previous roles had collapsed. The last weeks before Anniversary Court plus 366 days, Anya was immersed in a new major project. The international platform commissioned a series of interviews about how personal life crises influence the design of urban spaces. She recorded stories of a fireman who's a family torn apart by sleepless shifts and an architect going through a divorce during construction of a kindergarten, and a psychologist who advised mothers to find pocket parks, small natural corners in the metropolis where you can escape when your heart is breaking. Every voice resonated with her own history, and she increasingly understood how important a support ecosystem is. People, laws, trees, free access to the embankment, where you can push a stroller and cry with relief. On the evening of the last Monday in May, she was walking along this very embankment with David and Margarita. Her daughter was sitting on his shoulders, slapped her palms against his hair and laughed when the pigeons soared into the air. A light breeze from the river played with the ribbons on her cap, and Anya caught pictures of the future, was in no hurry to give them a name, like family or love. Just allowed the feeling of being. David talked about a new eco-project. Near the outskirts, a children's museum of light will be built, where the ceiling, covered with translucent plates, will diffuse the sun through the water curtain. In his drawings, Anya saw a reaction to her own last year's article on light wells for northern areas. They both understood their connection was born from the intersection of professions, flowed into care and may one day become something more, but for now no one rushes things. There were days when old fears seeped into dreams, and she didn't cry in her sleep, feeling the icy entrance and screams again. But, waking up, she saw the dawn, the wall beige linen, and the nightmare receded like a forgotten shadow. She turned out to be right therapist she began seeing once a month. Trauma may no longer be the main character in the story. If you give room to other characters, small joys, hours of creativity, quiet conversations in the kitchen with the smell creamy coffee. In mid-June, an official letter arrived from the bank. Installment on the payment of the share to Sergey is closed half ahead of schedule thanks to additional fees. And if the pace will be preserved, the apartment will be completely hers in 3 years instead of 5. Lisa sent in the messenger a sticker with a jumping frog in glasses and the caption Financial Freedom. The Best Hobby Club. On the same day, a certificate for a kindergarten in the innovative quarter arrived. Place was released early, so starting in September Margarita will spend 4 hours there. Game adaptation without stress. This opened up the opportunity for Anya to take more interviews offline, to go to the design lab. A few weeks later, in the 20s of July, he and David were standing on roof of the building he was designing. The sky was hot, the smell of the bitumen mixed with the aroma of staleness from the neighboring yard. He showed a laser pointing to the layout on the tablet, explaining how the light well would direct rays into the children's library. Anya listened, and suddenly inside her clicked gear. The heart said yes not to a romantic gesture, but to common work, co-creation. She took David by the hand not like a girl in love, but like a partner in the construction of life. And he, without turning his head, squeezed her fingers, as if it was an old agreement on a joint project. August gave a trip to the sea. The same Lisa won discount grant for an educational seminar in Sochi and took them with her. Anya, I was sitting on a quiet beach in the morning, my laptop on my lap, writing an article about the coastline as a metaphor for borders, and Margarita was building a sandcastle with David, laughing so loudly that passers-by turned around at night. They listened to the splash of the waves and talked about how good it was that each of them had enough pain to learn to appreciate the simple things, a glass of cold water, the ability to wake up without screaming, the right to choose. By September, their lives have a rhythm. Kindergarten in the morning, work on articles and projects in the afternoon. In the evening, they had dinner together. Sometimes the three of them, sometimes David took Margarita, so that Anya could make it to the editorial board or masterclass. Sergey still came on Wednesdays to wards, without lawyers, without scenes, with soft gratitude for the right to be next to daughter. He even started taking industrial design courses, dreaming of changing his specialty, and one day gave Anya a sketch of a playground inspired by her articles. She took the gift calmly, as a sign that the past really does learn not to repeat itself. And so a year passed. For some, a kaleidoscope of dates, for her, a sky-high construction site, laid out with bricks of effort. And then November came a small celebration for Christina in honor of the first year of their new life, which they decided to spend symbolically, without religious overtones, but in a small park with an old oak tree, which, according to locals, has survived everything wars and restorations. Friends and colleagues brought leaflets, which wrote the words that should accompany Margarita. Light, flexibility, compassion, wisdom, play. Anya read and felt how these words stuck to her the inside of her chest, like appliques in an album. David approached, holding the baby, who was playing with a bead on his glasses cord. He said he added the word space because people and cities need space to grow. When everyone left, Anya locked the door to the apartment, put her daughter to bed and returned to the laptop to finish writing the final section of the study about the human factor in city parks. It was dripping outside, autumn was getting tired, the air smelled of dampness. She placed the last commas, uploaded the document to the portal. I pressed send and felt satisfaction flowing through the keys into my palm. Every morning, every difficult conversation, every sleepless night were not accidental, but paved the way to this moment when she would press key and understand. Now she controls the whole plot. After the word, this story began on a rainy evening when a woman with a baby knocked on the door, not suspecting that the blows would not only come from tree, but also in the heart. She went through exile, fear, cold entrances and hot lamps of the delivery room, through the act and lawyers, through mediators and schedules, through lactation crises and crises of self-esteem. Her path was not straight, but in each the bend hid the lesson learned. The law can be an ally, a friend, a steering wheel, and a random neighbor with kind hands, a shoulder. The chain of resistance broke not her spirit, but the barriers of old delusions. She realized that family is not a cliché in Passport, but a safe space where you can warm up, become better, grow together. Work is not the enemy motherhood, but a part of identity that is important to preserve. Romantic feeling is not fireworks after midnight, but a long, soft fire that warms but doesn't burn. Now, as she closes her laptop late November evening and looking out the window at the shimmering city, she sees in each light is not someone else's apartment, but small manifestos of someone's independent lives. And somewhere in this light, on the neighboring balcony, there may be another woman sitting at the beginning of the path. Perhaps she's shaking with fear, maybe holding a tiny baby just like her. But now there's a story in the world about how fear doesn't eternal, that legal mechanisms really work, that allies are happens that even after the longest night the dawn comes. And if that the woman will look into her own darkness, she will find there the same spark of will that once flared up in Vanya when she said, "He will get his morning," and it is from this spark that the flame will flare up security, self-respect, and quiet strength. Envelope with stamp case completed, which now lies in a frame near the bedside lamp twigs. No, only the certificate of victory in court. This a museum exhibit of change, a relic that reminds us, freedom has a price, but it pays off with the opportunity to dictate your story and pass on to children not fear, but space. Margarita will grow up and, maybe he'll ask, "Mom, what kind of envelope is this?" And Mom will answer, "It's a ticket to our own world, where no scream will make us go out into the rain." And then the child will understand that the strongest home is built not from concrete, but from decisions, taken at moments when it seems that there is no strength. This is how this chronicle ends, but the path does not end. Ahead is an endless city, in which the light above the roofs confirms every night. Every woman has the right to a morning, to a voice, to a plan, to love, built out of respect, and the silence in which you can hear your own heartbeat, beating in rhythm. Now our life I dictate.